Hello and welcome to the new season of the International Championship. After I, in the last season, only avoided relegation because of some good results in my last two games, I'm now playing again in the Master Division. And if you take a look at my league, it is pretty stacked with very strong players, as we will also see when I introduce them to you very shortly. Before I do that, I want to give a quick shout out to Peter, a player who just recently started playing the game, joined the Discord community, and now uploaded two videos on YouTube, a replay analysis and a strategy guide to 4-player games. If you're interested in that, you can check out his channel. I've added him to the list of YouTube through the ages YouTube channels that I have in the description of my videos. So if you're interested, you can check that out. And yeah, now let's get back to my group here in the International Championship. And as always, at the start of a new season, I will introduce the opponents and their recent tournament performance to you very quickly. We will start with Mayondor, a player who I think 4 or 5 seasons ago actually managed to win the International Championship, won the Grandmaster Division. Now, in the last 2 seasons, he played in the Master Division, finished at second place 2 seasons ago with 23 points, and in the last season at the fourth position with 19 points. So, some solid performances still, but not making it back to the Grandmaster Division. In the Intermezzo Championship, things are not going as well for him. There he is playing in the last season. He played in the Gold Division, finished second with 16 points, and in this year's World Championship, he made it to stage 5. So a solid run, but didn't make it very deep. So basically the same as I did. With making it to stage 5. But also not that long ago, Mayondor won another tournament, the Royal League season, proving that he also has quite some strong abilities in 2-player games. And yeah, with that, I think it was a successful year for him, with being able to win 2 of the major leagues. Then we have Martin Pecheur, who you of course all know, the world champion of 2024. And he also played in the Master Division in the International Championship in the last 2 seasons. Last season he finished third with 19 points. He actually played in the same league as I did. And then the season before he finished fifth with 12 points. So some solid performances, but also not extraordinary. And in the Intermezzo Championship season, in the last season, he played in the Platinum Division, so things there haven't been going that well for him in the last seasons. For quite a couple of seasons, he played in the Grandmaster Division, same as I, but we both have to get back there now. And in the last season, he finished in a 3-way tie from first to third position with 19 points, and the tiebreaker made it that he finished second. So only or it was very close that he finished first and made it back to Master. Now he has to play another season in Platinum unless maybe some players drop from the higher leagues. But in the World Championship, in the most prestigious tournament, it is where Martin Pecheur maybe shines the most, because there he this year again made it into the semifinals. The 2 World Championships before, he both times managed to make it to the finals, won the bronze medal, won the whole thing, and now again making it to the semifinals, showing some very strong consistency at the highest level. Then we have Fanta Black, who in the last 2 seasons played in the Platinum Division. 2 seasons ago finished at the 5th position with 16 points, and then in the last season won his Platinum Division with 25 points, making it to Master. I think he's a player who is quite strong, but maybe not as consistent in his results. For example, in the last Intermezzo Championship season, he played in the Silver Division in a Silver League, finished second with 15 points, so maybe not that great, but he has already also played in the Grandmaster Division, I think, at some point in the Intermezzo Championship season. So he has been playing on a very high level, but maybe is lacking a little bit of consistency. But if he brings his A game to the table, he certainly can very much compete at this level. And in the World Championship this year, he made it to stage 5, same as I and Mayondor. Then we have Lech, a player who you had the chance to actually see a couple of times this year already, because I played one time together with him in the Master Division of the Intermezzo Championship and one time actually in the Platinum Division in the International Championship. That was 2 seasons ago. There I managed to only finish second, but I got then promoted as the best second place because a player dropped out of the higher leagues. But he actually won the group with a very strong result of 30 points, went up to Master. There he had a bit of a tough season, finished 5th with only 8 points, but that was actually enough to not get relegated, and with that has now another season in the Master Division. In the Intermezzo Championship, he actually played in the Grandmaster Division for the first time, so also there he has just shown some good results, made it to Grandmaster in the last season. He then finished 4th in Grandmaster, so got relegated with 8 points, but still a great achievement even making it there. And in the World Championship this year, he made it to stage 5. Then we have wolvs, who is of course also a tournament organizer, who now that Payada is taking a break is actually also organizing the World Championship of 2026. And he also has been pulling off some great performances as a player. And last international championship season, he actually played in the Grandmaster Division, got relegated as the 6th position, but with 12 points, so still managed to score some points. And in the season before, he, with a very strong result of 28 points, managed to win his Master Division, made it up to Grandmaster. In the Intermezzo Championships, he also played already some seasons in Grandmaster, and in the last Intermezzo Championship season, he actually managed to win his Master Division with 22 points, quite a strong result, and will then again play in Grandmaster in the next Intermezzo Championship season. So he is performing on a very high level, and also in this year's World Championship, he made it to the semifinals, so basically stage 7 of the tournament, and has also pulled off some very strong results there. Then we have Lcfyx, who made it up to Master from the Platinum Division in the last 2 seasons. Played in the Platinum Division in both seasons, had 22 points, which in the second last season was only enough for a 2nd position, but in the last season actually was enough to finish 1st in a 3-way tie actually, and then he got promoted now to Master. And in the last Intermezzo Championship season, he managed to finish 2nd in the Gold League with 17 points. I think he is also a player who is sometimes maybe lacking a little bit of consistency, but when the stakes are high or when he's maybe putting some effort into the games, he can compete at a very, very high level. He now, for the 2nd World Championship in a row, made it to the semifinals. In the World Championship 2024, I was actually in his semi-final group, and he was the biggest contender for the 1st place. Finished before some very strong players like wolvs and ST4 and KK in the semi-finals. And so in the World Championship, he has pulling off some really great results, and now it will be interesting to see what we can expect from him during this Master season. Alright, with that you have an overview of what those players achieved in the last tournaments, and now we will also quickly take a look at their clicker rating. And here we can again see that for a Master Division we have some very strong players in this group. Marta Pescher being at the 8th position in the rating at the moment, wolvs being at position 14, Mayondo at position 15, I'm at position 19 in the rating, then Lcfyx at position 30, Lech at position 65, but I could imagine that he will go a bit more up there if he continues his performances, like for example making it to Grandmaster in Intermezzo. And then Vanta Black, as said, is maybe not as consistent in his results, which is maybe a bit reflected now in the rating, but still he is still in the top 100, and if he manages to pull off his A game, he certainly is more than able to compete at this level. We can also maybe very quickly take a look at the 3 and the 4 player ratings, and there we can see that at the 3 player rating I'm actually the highest rated player, and wolvs, Marta Pescher are the next best players according to this rating, while Mayondo maybe in 3 player games drops a little bit in the rating. For the 4 player games, Marta Pescher and Mayondo are the highest rated players. I'm a bit more down there, and my 4 player game results haven't been that great this year. And then we have Wanda Black, who, according to the ratings, also quite a bit better in 4-player games. Alright, now that we have introduced the opponents of the season from my league, we can now take a look at the first game from the season, which will be a 3-player game against Wolves and Lcfyx. And yeah, I hope you're excited for it. Now, without further ado, let's take a look at the game. Alright, here we are in the game. I'm playing the 3rd position, and first of all, we can take a look at the leaders and wonders. And I do think there's quite some lab synergy in H3. We have Bill Gates, Sid Meier's, Steve Jobs, Marie Curie. There's also both Manhattan Project and the spaceflight. We have Gandhi and Churchill for the military, and then Fleming and Hollywood for a little bit of theater synergy if you get this combination going. In H2 we have the ocean liner service together with Maria Theresa as a strong combination. We have some culture leaders with Anthony Gaudi, Shakespeare and Darwin. We have Nobel as a strong economical leader. Cook is there but no Suez Canal. There are some strong wonders though. In addition to ocean liner there's Harvard College and Railroad, also statue. We have Robespierre as a military action leader in H2, 2 military action leaders in H1 with Joan of Arc and Jan Žižka. Genghis Khan and Barbarossa can help with the strength. We have Michelangelo, potentially together with the Machu Picchu. And then there's also Isabella and Columbus, but no big colony payoff as there's no Suez Canal in the game. We have Great Wall, but no Amici Castle, Universitas, but no Silk Road, and Forbidden City, but no St. Peter's Basilica. Alright, there are quite a lot of interesting cards in the row. Lcfyx can decide between Library, Confucius and Aristotle, decides to go with the Library here. Wolves could take the Pyramids here, but decides to rather go for Confucius with a yellow card, with Lcfyx already having taken Library, and with it maybe being likely that I will go for the Pyramids, he can expect to get Stonehenge at the next turn. And yeah, I think I kinda have to go for Pyramids plus Aristotle here, strong combination, I get a strong lead and a strong wonder. Of course, I could think about taking Hammurabi, maybe denying that from Lcfyx, but I would miss out on the Pyramids. Maybe Lcfyx could then go for Caesar, even though I think Caesar would stay on 3, but still it would be quite a heavy price to pay. Hammurabi, of course, not bad, but this, I think Pyramids and Aristotle is just a strong combination, so I think I am supposed to go for that here. That means that Lcfyx will now get Hammurabi, meaning his decision to take Library was maybe well thought out, because yeah, I think the picks from me and Wolves were certainly ones that could have been expected like that, and now he, with having not committed to a leader yet, will get Hammurabi, has a strong wonder, takes the Richland here, so I think here's a strong start, but I think with all of those cards in the row, all the players have quite a strong start here. Wolves will get Confucius with the Stonehenge. Interestingly, he starts with building a lab. He has already a lot of additional science with Stonehenge and Confucius, so I'm not sure if I would build this lab. Maybe I would just start by building the mine, but maybe he thinks that he can still use even more science quite well. Now it is my turn. I build a mine, I increase my population. There is an early iron coming down the row. I could just elect Aristotle, take the iron, but I think delaying the mine here is just very costly, and so I decided against going for that very early iron. Now I could take the engineering genius and delay electing Aristotle. And together with the Pyramids, of course, the engineering genius can be nice. If I get some additional resource, I can finish the Pyramids a turn earlier, and getting the civil action a turn earlier can be quite valuable, especially in combination with Aristotle, who then maybe can use the additional civil action to take another technology card. And also I would take the card away from Lcfyx, but it would also mean that the iron drops down to 2 civil actions to Lcfyx, and I also thought about Lcfyx turns a little bit, and I thought he could also still be inclined to take the iron if it stays on 3. It can be quite strong. He has a Richland in hand that he wants to use at some point. So I thought that maybe I can just cost him a civil action here if I don't touch anything on the row, and just looking at myself, while the engineering genius could make the Pyramids, could make it that I can finish that a bit quicker. Just looking at things for myself, I thought that maybe just saving the civil action right now and taking a card that is available for cheaper is maybe the better course of actions for myself. And with now Lcfyx maybe still kind of wanting to take iron for 3, it also gets somewhat expensive to take the engineering genius, so it's maybe also not too bad that he gets it here. I take the Richland here. I thought about also the cultural heritage. Maybe the first copy of iron will be taken away. Of course, there's also irrigation, but with the cultural heritage, I just know that I can use it for certain. At the end, I went with the Richland. I didn't want to go for the frugality here, which normally, when we just took a look at the yellow cards, would be the card that I would like to take here. But as said, then the iron would drop down to 2 civil actions for Lcfyx, and I thought he might still take it on 3, so I don't want to give them a civil action. And so I, in the end, went with the Richland, hoping that I either will find a second copy of iron or a copy of irrigation. I want to take technologies anyway with Aristotle to then be able to use this Richland at some point. I then draw 2 cards, 2 new deposits and a rebellion. Lcfyx indeed takes the iron for 3, so I made it a bit more expensive for him. He then still takes the engineering genius, builds a step of the library, is delaying the second lab for now, and then can finish maybe the library with the engineering genius and then soon also go for some iron upgrades. Wolv's Seeds, the development of civil life is revealed. He uses it to build a 3rd mine and is actually also willing to take the iron here for 3. Which is interesting. He doesn't have the additional civil action from Hammurabi, has a 4-step wonder, so it is somewhat expensive, but he also has a lot of science to spend, and in such a scenario going for the iron can maybe be better than, for example, going for the alchemy. Also, he makes sure that I don't get a copy. There are some strong H2 wonders, which makes the iron maybe a bit more strong, so I do think it's maybe fine, but I feel like for him it's a bit more expensive to take that for 3 than for Lcfyx. That of course means that I will be the player without iron. There's no James Watt sadly, but no, I hopefully will be able to do something else. There's a copy of Alchemy and a copy of Monarchy coming down the road. Both could be interesting. Wolves actually takes a Richland here, allowing him to potentially even go for 2 iron upgrades at the next turn. I will start my turn by taking the Alchemy and by taking the Monarchy. I think both cards will help me building up my economy. Both cards score me a science with Aristotle. I used the development of civil life to build my second lab, making it that now if there are some additional resources revealed, I could, for example, just finish the pyramids at the next turn, or go for 2 instead of 1 alchemy upgrade. Both could be options at the next turn. I have now 1 civil action left. I could increase my population, but I don't like it too much to go into consumption early. So I'm more thought about either taking Breakthrough or Bread and Circuses. Bread and Circuses also giving me 1 science, but also making it that I have the technology in hand. When we take a look at the leaders though, there's no Pierre in the game. There's Darwin, there's Anthony Gaudi, and having a Happy Face solution, having access to that can sometimes be good. But there's also Joan of Arc, who prefers maybe to rather have temples, and the Breakthrough is just a strong card. Having even more science available could still be quite strong, and also I take that card away from Lcfyx, who might still very much like that card, with especially maybe with going into early iron. And so at the end I took the Breakthrough here. With Pierre in the game, maybe I would already be inclined to take the Bread and Circuses, but like this I will take the Breakthrough. At the next turn, if there are some resources revealed, I can maybe finish the pyramids, otherwise I can also just increase my economy by starting to go for alchemy, then hopefully soon also for monarchy, and then finish the pyramids. And so I was, even though I missed out on the iron, still quite happy, especially because I got those cards a bit cheaper than my opponents got the iron. Also I have the new deposits, so I know that I maybe don't miss out on even more resources with having now only the bronze mines available for a while. Lcfyx Seeds and the development of politics is revealed. We draw all at 3 additional cards. I drew 2 aggressions and the Reign of Terror. Lcfyx this turn doesn't have enough science to go for the iron yet, but can finish the Library of Alexandria, reveals the fighting band tactic, and interestingly is picking the printing press here. At the next turn, thanks to the rich land and thanks to now just having enough science, he will be able to go for 2 iron upgrades. Maybe he didn't like the other cards too much. I mean, there's a copy of Knights, so it's an interesting choice here going for the printing press. There's some synergy. There's Shakespeare, Anthony Gaudi, Darwin, so in H2 a lot of synergy. In H3 there's at least Fleming, the Hollywood, so maybe he just wants to try setting something up. And no, is actually willing to go for the printing press, has also a tactic that requires infantry units, maybe with that didn't really want to go for the knights. He actually still has the military action from Hammurabi, which he will use to take Columbus, who, if he has maybe drawn something like Inhabited 1 or Vast Territory 1, can maybe help him to get a population to actually get those printing presses going, and he also didn't build the second lab yet, so it's not a bad situation for the printing presses, but still an interesting move to reach out for them for 2 civil actions. Wolvs seeds, the development of warfare is revealed. I only want to have a free population to take advantage from that is Lcfyx. Wolvs will now start going for 2 iron upgrades, goes up to 5 resource production, which I think is quite strong, and then takes the warfare. Will still have a lot of science with Confucius and the Stonehenge, so the warfare is maybe a fine technology to invest into. Now it is my turn. I will start by going for the alchemy, going for 1 upgrade at the next turn when I just take 1 technology, and I will already take 1 this turn, so I can definitely go for the monarchy. Maybe with some additional resources we'll be able to finish the pyramids, otherwise I maybe can go for another alchemy upgrade. Now I have 2 civil actions left. Maybe I could think about a masonry, but it's also a bit expensive. I have already upgraded 1 lab. Maybe going for masonry and monarchy in time could be a bit tricky, so I thought here it's maybe not ideal. And instead I took this copy of knights, scoring me another science, just making sure that I have a military technology in hand. I could now just take another technology. With going for the monarchy, I don't think I need the warfare that much, even though it could still be a fine card to have in hand. I more thought about the theology. The bread and circuses are gone, there's only 1 copy of theology left. There is John of Arc coming down the row, who could maybe be an interesting leader for myself. And I would just score science with Aristotle, and I would have a happy phase solution in hand. Also, I would not go into consumption yet, and one of the 2 events we're having a free population matters is now already out anyway. At the end I still decided to play it maybe more civil action efficiently and increase my population, but I'm not sure. Maybe with the theology scoring me 1 science and 1 food basically, maybe I could have been willing to just take it here and score another science. Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe I could have actually done that, but of course, if there are some interesting options available for me at the next turn, then it could still be quite nice and important for me having increased the population already. I keep the reds and the Reign of Terror in hand, draw the historic territory and the naval trade agreement. Now it's Lcfyx's turn. He will actually go for the Universitas, increases his population, takes the masonry and builds a step. Again, an interesting move here, because he could have just gone for 2 iron upgrades. I do think he could have even gone for 2 iron upgrades and then taken the Universitas if he wanted to, but he actually values it to have the printing press. I mean, if he wants to try something with those urban buildings, of course the masonry can save some resources, can now save a civil action. Nonetheless, just going for 2 iron upgrades and grabbing Universitas, I think also would have been quite strong, so an interesting choice here from Lcfyx, being willing to take that masonry, maybe also slightly because of hate drafting, because for Wolves, who has the Stonehenge, the masonry would have been extremely strong, so maybe also Lcfyx didn't really like it giving that card to Wolves, and is now maybe wanting to go for the Universitas first, so an interesting choice again. Let's see where the setup will lead him to that he is creating here. Wolves seeds with Confucius, opens the development of science, has now even more science available, takes the code of laws here, develops it, has now 5 civil actions up and running, upgrades his last mine, increases his population to get out of corruption. Now it is my turn. I decided to seed the reds here. I can increase my population this turn, and also Wolves has Confucius, maybe he will just push, and there's a chance that he will get quite a bit punished here with then losing 5 food. Or even 6, because the card now revealed is actually the development of trade routes. I this turn can now go for the monarchy, increase the amount of civil actions. I don't have enough resources still for the pyramid, so I have to delay that wonder by another turn. But the good news is that I can take that engineering genius, so I can use that yellow card quite effectively, and with that I can upgrade a lab this turn while still having enough resources to finish the pyramids thanks to using the engineering genius. I also definitely want to increase my population here because the reds are coming, and then I take the engineering genius. I have another civil action left, and I decided to just pick up the swordsman, scoring another science with Aristotle, being a bit more flexible in regard of tactics, also potentially for H2 tactics, so that felt quite strong. I also considered John of Arc here, but there has been no free temple revealed. I missed out now on the theology. I have already my 3rd military action. But I mean, the other leaders, Jan Žižka, the military action, also don't need that much. I mean, I can copy the fighting band tactic that got revealed, so Jan Žižka can be fine. Barbarossa with the reds coming is not that great. Michelangelo could maybe be interesting, but without iron mines also not that great. So maybe I could just take Joan of Arc here as a solid leader, giving me a somewhat nice package of abilities. But at the end, I rather scored the science with Aristotle and thought maybe I have a chance to get Jan Žižka or something. Or maybe get Barbarossa at the very end of H1, maybe even get only one activations out of him and then try to quickly get into an H2 leader also could be an idea. I will build a warrior here. I can still finish the pyramids at the next turn, and that makes sure that I'm not the weakest after my turn, as maybe Lcfyx, if he has an event, wants to seed, and maybe wolvs seeds anyway with being Confucius. Lcfyx indeed seeds. I was hoping that maybe the reds could be revealed. Sadly, they are not, and instead a Confucius event is revealed, giving everyone one additional science. Lcfyx, after having delayed it the turn before, is now willing to go for the iron, goes for 2 upgrades, increases his population, so sadly prepares himself nicely for the reds, and is then developing the masonry, meaning that at the next turn he can actually finish the Universitas by using only 1 civil action. Now it's wolv's turn. Sadly, he doesn't see it. Maybe being afraid of strength events, or potentially also the reds, playing it a bit more cautious, which I guess can be fine. He still has a lot of science anyway with the Stonehenge, and some events could do some real damage to him here. Maybe I would have been greedy, as I'm all often are, but I do think maybe wolv's does the correct decision here by being a bit more cautious, of course also heavily depending on what events he himself pushed into the deck. Sadly, he now also is nicely prepared for the reds. And builds a warrior to get stronger, takes Michelangelo, and builds a step of the Stonehenge. So, yeah, I mean, he has gotten his iron mine production going very quickly. There are some strong H2 wonders. He at least has 1 happy face from his wonders, so I do think Michelangelo has quite some potential here, and it might be the correct choice to reach out for him here for 2 civil actions instead of, for example, just going for Joan of Arc. And potentially very interesting wonder for wolvs could be the Great Wall. And because of that, it could also be important to already build the first step to at least be able to take the Great Wall for 2 civil actions with Michelangelo if it should be available already at the next turn. Now it's my turn. I don't have anything to do with my politics phase, so I just offered a naval trade agreement to wolvs, wanting to get the additional blue tokens. Maybe he has seeded some colonies, but there's no Suez Canal in there, and maybe he hasn't seeded any, so wolvs is rejecting the pact here. I can score another science with Aristotle here, taking the Code of Laws. I can develop it. I can finish the pyramids, going up to 7 civil actions. So I have missed out on the iron, but I have now some solid science production running. I have lots of civil actions, can maybe get into coal in H2. So hopefully the timing for that card will be good. And yeah, with that, I was still quite happy about my position here. And then I still have 2 civil actions left. Sadly, the other leaders have been now a bit late. Barbarossa isn't really that great. The reds could already be revealed before my next turn. So maybe I will go for Jan Žižka, but he isn't on the row yet. And with the last 2 civil actions, I then decided to just take some cards. I thought I definitely want to have the irrigation here. Just having the option to get into the irrigation, but also in combination with the ocean liner service, it can be a nice cheap way to avoid famine. And then I thought about taking the drama, just scoring another science with Aristotle. And maybe if there would have been Bach and Marlene in the game, I would have been willing to do this. There are still some leaders who synergize with the drama, Antoni Gaudi, Shakespeare. But I have now already a bunch of technologies in hand, I'm low in resources, and with that I at the end decided to rather go for the patriotism. Also I will copy the fighting band tactic using my H1 military actions, and so that was the end of my turn, and I was hoping that maybe Jan Žižka will be revealed soon so that I can go for him at the next turn. I draw another pact here. Lcfyx seeds and opens the raid, so another Confucius event. He will just finish the Universitas, has now some very strong science production, goes for Columbus, takes the drama in hand, so certainly is nicely prepared for Shakespeare. Antoni Gaudi takes the urban growth in the rich land. Now it's wolv's turn, he seeds, opens another Confucius event, so only Confucius events being revealed so far. He this turn needs to finish the Stonehenge, and as you can see, the Great Wall even dropped down to 1 civil action for him, and I do think in this position it's just a great wonder for him, will give him another happy face for Michelangelo, and more importantly, give him a nice way to increase his strength. Could even make him quite threatening if he just builds 2 more warriors and finishes that wonder, maybe goes for the warfare. He already has more than 10 strength, so I have to be careful about that. He then can get out of corruption by building a step, making it also that if a wonder drops down to this 2 civil action area again, he could finish the Great Wall and then take that new wonder with Michelangelo. He also builds a warrior this turn to not be the weakest. Now it is my turn. I didn't really want to push any of those cards. Maybe I could try to go for the foray, but if Lcfyx gets something like Vast Territory 1 now, and wolvs will finish the Great Wall out of the sudden, it could get quite difficult for me. And also more importantly, I have now the ability to increase my population 1 more time, and I want to do this before the reds hit, and with that I again didn't want to push, and instead gave it another try to offer the naval trade agreement, this time to Lcfyx, trying to get the additional blue tokens. Sadly it was rejected again. So this turn I will start by increasing my population, and now nicely being prepared for reds. And then it's a bit tricky because I have lots of civil actions, and the question is what to do with them. I could maybe go for Swordsman, Blade of Patriotism or something, go for some upgrades, maybe take some yellow cards, but it wouldn't feel that great. And if I take a lot of those yellow cards, there could even be potentially the danger that Jan Žižka could be discarded before my next turn, so I also have to be a little bit careful about all of that. And at the end, even though it doesn't feel great at all, and I was a bit unhappy that Jan Žižka was that late on the row, I actually decided to take Jan Žižka for 3, which feels weird, because I could probably get him for 1 civil action at the next turn, but at the next turn there will be H2, there might be a lot more interesting cards in the row, and I thought it could just be important to already have spent those civil actions to take and elect Jan Žižka now, so that I have more freedom at the next turn. Also makes it that I can get a bit stronger than Lcfyx without needing to do any investments. With the last 2 civil actions I then took the rich land. I think the resources are a lot more important in my situation than the additional science that I could, for example, get from the cultural heritage. And now, just for example, if there's a coal available for 3 civil actions, I can now take it, develop it, go for an upgrade. Of course, I have even 7 civil actions, so I could do this and still take and elect Jan Žižka. But I just felt like it feels awkward, but the way how I could spend my civil actions this turn would just not be that efficient, and I just wanted to have those civil actions already out of the way, even though this turn it cost me 2 additional ones compared to the next turn, but I felt like the civil actions that I have out of the way now already will hopefully be meaningful at the next turn. Of course, that's not guaranteed, but at the end it felt just better than just taking a bunch of cards that are maybe not that great to take, especially for the price that I would need to pay for them. I draw the autonomous territory here, a colonization card in the prosperity, Lcfyx. Again, he has an interesting playstyle so far in this game, has set up for maybe some nice printing press and drama stuff, is now willing to take Shakespeare for 3, interestingly. Maybe also doesn't have the greatest way to spend his civil actions. I do think the Forbidden City could actually be quite interesting for him here, especially if he plans to go for Shakespeare, because then he has help with the happy faces, gets another civil action. It's very nice, or nicely possible for him to finish that with the masonry. Of course, Shakespeare could be taken away, but it can be a bit tricky to pull him off anyway in a three-player game. So an interesting choice here. Basically, he is playing the game like it would be a 2-player game, at least in some ways. So let's see how that will pay off for him and how nicely he will be able to make the Shakespeare work. He then upgrades the last iron mine, and with that has now 6 resource production going. wolvs finishes the Great Wall this turn, and as you can see, the ocean liner service coming down the row, but wolvs is missing 1 civil actions to take it. Of course, he would love to take it with having Michelangelo, but now I, at my turn, have a chance to take it away. And as you can see, there's also an early coal coming down the row, so I was very happy to see this. I was also now hoping that wolvs won't deny the coal, but he won't do this. Instead, he goes for the warfare, builds another warrior, is now at 11 strength, so it's looking quite threatening, and then takes the reserves. With taking the reserves, however, the coal will even drop down to 1 civil actions for me, and I can now go for quite a nice turn at my next turn. This time, with the third attempt, the naval trade agreement is actually accepted. I again didn't want to see it, and I just thought I will give it another try. The funny story behind this is that I actually misclicked. I again wanted to get the additional blue tokens, but I misclicked and offered it for the colonization force. This time it will get accepted. At least if maybe not both opponents push, then I can maybe still get a colony in the next event deck. I have already one colonization card drawn, so who knows, maybe I can actually make use out of that colonization force. Also, I can be somewhat fine with losing the blue token, so maybe at the end it was even somewhat fine, but I actually wanted to offer it for the blue tokens again, but misclicked and now have the colonization force. And this turn I will be able to go for one coal upgrade using the rich land, and I still have enough civil actions to take the ocean liner service, and I do think with how the cards have been coming down the row, I got heavily rewarded for my decision about Jan Žižka the turn before, because I would now not have enough civil actions to take and elect Jan Žižka left. And Jan Žižka is quite important here because of the additional military action from him and the additional strength from him, I can defend against wolves thanks to having drawn that H2 colonization card, so I don't necessarily have to build up more military. So of course there could have been cards that are not that interesting, but at the start of a new age it's just always quite strong if you make sure to have a lot of free civil actions to take advantage of those cards early, and this time I got quite rewarded for that, and I was very happy getting this early coal going, having the ocean liner service available, also with Maria Theresa being the game, and I even have still one civil action left, which I can now use to take the breakthrough, just getting even 2 more science along the way. Could have also developed the irrigation or something, which pairs nicely with the ocean liner service to be more civil action efficient, but I have a lot of civil actions, and so I thought paying 1 civil action for 2 science is fine, despite my good science production. I draw war and aggression, and maybe most importantly another colonization card, so if I have the chance to get a colony in the next deck, that could actually be very interesting now. Lcfyx continues his series of interesting decisions. He's actually not using Columbus, but just electing Shakespeare. Either he has no colony drawn and is not willing to gamble any longer, or he has a colony drawn, but finds it more important to make space in his hand to go for the constitutional monarchy and develop that already, as maybe also wolves would be very inclined to take that card. So it would be interesting to know if he had a colony in hand, or if he went for Columbus as a gamble earlier on, but now he is actually electing Shakespeare already. Goes for the constitutional monarchy, doesn't take the selective breeding, which is a bit risky, because wolves very likely could take one, and I could then take the second one. Ocean liner is gone, meaning that he might miss out on a solution to get more population going, which is one of the key ingredients if you want to get a successful Shakespeare game going. So especially with those cheap technologies that he's having. So he could have also just taken the selective breeding, but decides to rather fix his actions, which of course also is quite important for him. He was still at 4 civil and 2 military actions. Interestingly, he's taking the opera here without already having the drama in hand, but for now he's in low population with good resource production, and in such a situation the opera is probably a nice upgrade towards the drama. Wolves seeds and opens the red, so that card is finally revealed now. At least my opponents lose 2 food. Wolves now takes the selective breeding, which is somewhat interesting because he could have also taken the Conmon, but he might also very likely get a Conmon for 1 civil action at the next turn, and just wanted to secure this copy of selective breeding, which I do think is maybe more important. He could have taken both, gone for Conmon and selective breeding, but while he hasn't a lot of science saved up, he doesn't have the biggest production, so maybe he wanted to make sure to get that breakthrough as well, and then develops the selective breeding. Still has enough science left for Conmon, but thanks to the breakthrough he will also still have a decent amount of science left after developing the Conmon at the next turn. It indeed happened that not both of my opponents have seeded, meaning that I now could push a colony into the deck. I thought even about the autonomous territory, but it will just take a while longer, and I thought it could be nice if the colony is revealed quickly, and at least I kind of really need a happy face. So, I mean, the others also somewhat, but wolves maybe not that much. So I thought I rather will want to go with the historic territory, which is maybe a bit less swingy. I'm a bit behind in strength. There could be aggressions played. If there's some military pressure, I might not been able to bid that much, especially also if the colony is revealed on Lcfyx turn. So I, at this point, didn't want to gamble on putting autonomous into the deck, especially because my action count is quite fine at the moment. And I'm the one who can easily upgrade in an H3 government form, while my opponents, after having gone for an H2 government form, it's not that clean to go for an H3 government form. So I see it, and the event revealed is the call to arms, which hurts a bit in this situation, because I have a lot of interesting cards that I can consider here. So I lose 2 civil actions, my draws that I get as, for that are also not that great. This turn I will go for 1 coal upgrade, and now there are just a lot of interesting cards in the row. There's this copy of Architecture with the amount of science that I'm having and with planning to finish the Ocean Liner soon. That's just a very strong card to get for me, I think, here. Then, if I want to finish the Ocean Liner service at the next turn, it could be nice to get that going as early as possible. I might really like to take the reserves here, which could allow me to already finish the Ocean Liner at the next turn. Then there's of course also a happy face solution with the organized religion, but there are others coming, so that's not the most important. But the patriotism could be interesting, and a card that could also be very, very interesting here is the selective breeding, because as I said at Lcfyx last turn, if I take that away now, he is stuck on those HA farms, and with the plan of going for Shakespeare, that could be quite a disaster for him. And in 3-player games, if you can hit your opponent that hard by denying a card, it can be fine to hate draft. I don't really need it in order to avoid famine. I probably would prefer to go for the irrigation. If I take the selective breeding here, I might actually still go for the irrigation, so I don't need the selective breeding really for myself, but maybe it gives me some options. If I don't want to spend the science or the action during H2, I can also wait for selective breeding. So it could give me some options, and I would go for a very big denial. And then there's of course also a copy of cannons. If I take that, I have all technologies for all the different military types, so I'm nicely prepared for tactics. Before the call to arms, I could take some more cards. Now I'm a bit more restricted, and at the end I decided to take the architecture, take the reserves, develop the architecture, and take the selective breeding away, making it that at the next turn I am able to finish the Ocean Liner service, get some population going, and I deny the selective breeding here, but at the cost of not taking the cannons, and yeah, which is definitely a cost. Yeah, and because of that, I was a bit unhappy about the call to arms. Maybe I should have not pushed, but I have those colonization cards and unwillingly now also this colonization bonus. So I thought I kind of want to get that colony in there, but now with 2 additional civil actions, I could have just taken the cannon and I would have felt a lot better about the turn. Now I needed to think about, do I want to play it more safe, securing myself the cannons, or do I want to get that Ocean Liner going quickly with the architecture plus denying Lcfyx the selective breeding. So yeah, the call to arms limiting my turn here a little bit. I keep the autonomous foray and the 2 colonization cards, draw some more events. Lcfyx takes the rifleman, goes for some upgrades, actually is even becoming the strongest now, and then also takes the cannons and builds the religion, interestingly, maybe just using the last civil action. He had a full hand and needed to do something. Wolves actually is trying an aggression against me, but I have the defense card to defend. Sadly, I'm missing this defense card now to bid for the colony. He is then going for the Conmon, making sure to draw more cards. Maybe that was also the reason why he was willing to play that aggression. He then takes the railroad and will be able to finish that wonder, can take it nicely with Michelangelo, goes for 2 upgrades to his farms, has still enough resource to finish the railroad, especially with the engineering genius, so I think he is going for quite a strong setup here. The only part that he's still missing is science production, but he has enough to go, for example, for scientific method at the next turn, or maybe in 2 turns. Now it's my turn. I didn't want to push, and now this turn I decided to finish the Ocean Liner, get the population income going. But I also kind of need to get a bit stronger because I would be in danger of an aggression from Lcfyx, something that I don't really want to risk here. I thought about developing Swordsman, maybe playing Patriotism, going for 2 upgrades. But I haven't drawn an H2 tactic yet, and I felt like I don't want to commit to the Swordsman necessarily yet. So I thought I might just play the Patriotism and build a warrior. That means that 1 defense card is enough to defend against Lcfyx. And that's also what I will do here, but then I have still some civil actions left. I first thought about just taking some yellow cards. Maybe that could also be the right choice, but here I actually decided to use some of my science to go for the navigation, making me a bit more safe. In addition to building the warrior, I'm now even safe from a double aggression. And also, of course, I have now this big colonization force, meaning there's a good chance that I can maybe win the historic territory. And now I can also bid for the historic territory if it should be revealed on Lcfyx turn. So those are some advantages. Yeah, I think the strength is just quite useful. Maybe there are even more colonies coming. I still have the autonomous territory in hand that I could push at some point. Of course, I could also take a rich land in the urban growth. That's quite a lot of resource that I miss out on now. Could maybe quickly go for the last coal upgrade or for a farm upgrade for very cheap. So maybe I could be fine without going for the navigation. But at the end, because of the additional strength and at least 1 colony coming, went for the navigation here. Maybe taking the yellow cards would also be very fine though. I draw some cards here, more events, also another colonization card actually. Lcfyx seeds and immigration is revealed, not ideal for me. I'm the one who misses out on that and doesn't get an additional population. For Lcfyx, I think the additional population is extremely helpful as he missed out on the farm upgrades. It means that he can actually build a cannon now. Interestingly, he's also taking the journalism, so basically getting the better type or that more advanced type of those technologies from both printing press and drama. With the new population that he got from the immigration, he can now build a cannon, and as soon as he revealed the defensive army tactic, I thought, oh, it could get a bit dangerous. If he only builds 1 more cannon, he has a lot of strength very quickly. And yeah, so me not taking the cannons and early on, me maybe opening the call to arms could potentially backfire now, but it now also will heavily depend on whether I or Wolves will be the player to get the 2nd copy of cannons. Lcfyx interestingly also being willing to take the cavalryman here. Wolf seeds, a Confucius event is revealed, and there is a copy of cannons in the row. Also a copy of riflemen. I was now very interested to see what Wolves will be doing. And he is going for Darwin here, which is of course a big indicator that he wants to take some technologies from the further rows, or from the more expensive rows. Takes the rifleman, takes the cannons, develops, or first of all builds another lab, which also scores him another culture production with Darwin, and then develops the rifleman, goes for some upgrades. He has actually the Great Wall, will finish the railroad soon, and then could just go for cannons, copying the defensive army tactic, which might make him even more threatening than Lcfyx potentially. And I now missed out on the cannons. I can't copy the tactic soon. I haven't drawn a tactic by myself, so I felt like, oops, that could get quite dangerous now, and could maybe be an example of maybe securing yourself a copy of cannons is just something that you probably should do, even if it costs you some economical benefits. And so let's see how I will be able to deal with the strength push from my opponents. It's now the end of H2. First of all, I will start by seeding and push the autonomous territory into the deck, especially if I maybe need to do a transition into a new tactic. It could be quite nice to send some units away, and I still have this big colonization force. And the event that I open are the uncertain borders, so sadly I lose a yellow token here. And that yellow token loss is actually quite annoying, because in order to get more strength, my plan was to use the population that I get from the ocean liner service to build another swordsman. Now, after that event being revealed, the population that I get is actually an unhappy one, meaning making it quite a bit more tricky to actually get a free population to build a swordsman to make sure that I'm safe from aggressions. It's the end of H2, I need a new leader, and with the ocean liner service, Maria Theresa is just very nice for me to have. Will also help myself to build up more units. And I will first of all develop the swordsman. I mean, I haven't drawn a tactic by myself. My plan, my hope was just to build up some swordsmen now, brave for early rockets, and then copy the defensive army tactic, which could definitely work, but I'm very much dependent on the timing of rockets for that. So I developed the swordsman using a military action from Yachishka before switching to Maria, then using the ocean liner. Sadly, with already having built the swordsman now, have an uprising issue that I need to fix. And one way how I could fix it would be to take the organized religion, develop it, and build one. So that was something that I considered. Then I have only one civil action left, and that's a bit tricky because in order to be safe from aggression, I kinda need to play the reserves and go for some more upgrades to swordsman after having spent 5 resources on the organized religion, but then I've used all of my civil actions and I miss out on the wave of nationalism, a card that I thought could be very important for me despite having Maria. Getting those additional resources for the military could just be extremely important. And so I thought maybe it's fine to go for that organized religion play, but missing out on the wave could be quite tricky. Making it that I can get hit by an aggression could be quite dangerous as well. I could just destroy a mine, not go for the organized religion. At the end, I went for a somewhat interesting solution. Instead of building an organized religion, I actually developed... First of all, I will actually take the wave, just highlighting that I found that card very important to have. Then I will develop the selective breeding, not the irrigation, because what I will do now works better with having the selective breeding, and that is, I will go for an upgrade, making it that I can now destroy the other farm. The one selective breeding farm will be enough for quite a while to avoid famine issues with the ocean liner, and it's not ideal, but I can keep all of my 3 mines and I can get the wave, plus now play the reserves to get more upgrades going. I go for 2 upgrades, leaving 1 warrior behind, thinking that maybe I can use that warrior to win the Historic Territory 1, at least still potentially, and that means that I have enough strength. I have now enough strength already to defend against Lcfyx. I keep the freedom of movement, draw the Conquistadors tactic, and Lcfyx is indeed trying an aggression. I can defend that aggression, sadly at the cost of my defense cards, and also if wolvs is now trying an aggression, I can't defend any longer, so I was quite afraid that the game could be going into a very tricky direction for me here. Lcfyx plays the Revolutionary Idea, goes for the strategy, so it somewhat seems that he has abandoned his peaceful Shakespeare plans and is instead going for some big military push. At least making use out of the happy phase, so the happy phase at the moment being quite relevant, also actually to win the immigration that we saw earlier. So you can't say that Shakespeare is doing nothing here, and he is going for another upgrade, is now at 24 strength, is looking quite threatening, potentially for follow-up aggression, and yeah, I was not happy about what I saw here. 8-3 starts now. Sadly, the naval trade agreement is now expired before the historic territory got revealed, so yeah, at the end, me misclicking it sadly didn't out of the sudden lead to a good outcome for me. And sadly, what also isn't a good outcome is that aggression wolves, knowing that I have now already in total used 3 H2 defense cards to defend myself from aggressions, tries this blunder and sadly is successful, taking away 4 resources from myself. He will increase his population 2 times, finishes the railroad, and then can for 1 civil action take the team sports, leaving the professional sports available for me. Yeah, but if he wants to increase his population 2 times, fix his uprising issues, finish the railroad, and take a happy face solution, he doesn't have the civil action left to take the professional sports. I this turn will cede. I know what is on top, the historic territory, and I thought that maybe it could be quite nice to actually win that one now. And so I cede. The freedom of movement could also help me with the military if it is revealed, so I also kind of wanted to have that event in the deck. I was willing to bid 1 swordsman, and that is also enough to win that colony, making my situation a bit more better with the happy faces. Luckily, there is the professional sports available for me to have the ability to get into a happy face solution, but there's also this copy of Air Forces, which could be important to secure for myself, but also very importantly take it away from my opponents. But the problem is, if I take both of those cards, it gets somewhat tricky to still build up a lot of military to make myself a bit more threatening, or not threatening, but make it that I can at least somewhat nicely potentially defend against some aggressions. And at the end, I actually decided to skip the Air Forces here. Lcfyx at least needs some more science, maybe wants to go for the organized religion, but of course the Air Force will be strong for him at some point. And then I'm playing just behind wolves, so the chance for the second Air Force that I will get them is not that high. It's a tough choice, but I first of all need rockets anyway. I will this turn actually build a lot of swordsmen. Maybe just going for rockets is fine, and I don't necessarily need Air Forces, but no, it was still a tough choice. But I felt like I'm in a somewhat vulnerable spot, and maybe I need to take some risks, and taking both of those cards could first of all also involve some risks, because then I could potentially get hit by double aggression again. And so at the end, instead of taking both cards, I decided to take the professional sports. I also thought about just taking Air Forces, but the professional sports is also just very helpful immediately this turn, because I have luckily just enough resources left to build one, and then I can use Maria's resources to build a swordsman. But not only that, I can also blade a wave in order to build 2 more swordsmen, making it that I have now at least the same amount of strength as wolves, making it that he can't go for an aggression against me. Lcfyx sadly can. I of course have this H2 defense card, but he basically knows that that isn't a colonization card, because otherwise I could have used it to defend against the aggression from wolves. Maybe he has forgotten it. It's an async game. Sometimes you don't forget that and then don't pay close enough attention. So maybe we'll forget it, but against him, if he has an aggression, he very likely might try to go for that. Sadly, I don't have 2 civil actions left. The patriotism would be a very nice card for me to have. Now I have only 1 left. I even considered just floating that civil action. But at the end, I actually took the scientific method in hand. Just having it could be fine. At the moment, it looks like I won't have hand space issues, hopefully. And there is Bill Gates, Sid Meier's, Steve Jobs, Marie Curie, so I just felt like having the technology. There are some scenarios where it could be useful, and so I decided to take it. Now I was afraid of getting hit by another aggression from Lcfyx, and there is no aggression happening, but if that is good news for me remains to be seen, because there's actually a war declared against me, a war with technology. Lcfyx fixes his happy faces with going for the organized religion, destroys a lab, dropping down a bit in science, but being able to build a cannon, and he might now steal a bit of science from me, takes the Air Forces, and then floats his last civil action, and isn't willing to pick up a copy of Scientific Method himself. Now it's Wolf's turn. He seeds, the National Bride is revealed, giving him 5 additional culture. He takes the Scientific Method, is willing to upgrade some, there is some synergy for the labs in the game, and then takes the patriotism and the military build-up. Then it is my turn. I can't use my politics phase. Now the question is how to defend against this war. And here it might be important to make sure that Lcfyx doesn't steal 6 or more science in 2 ways. First of all, it could mean that I lose one of those blue technologies, which could be annoying, losing a civil action, but also losing the navigation and potentially dropping down even more in strength and being more even more at a disadvantage. But also, if I let Lcfyx take 6 science, there's at least the potential that he could already go for Air Force at the next turn. He has, despite going for the war, still drawn 3 H3 cards at his last draw step, and could have already a war in hand, or maybe another H2 war. I of course will use the Ocean Liner service. I decide to build another swordsman with Maria. I now sadly have to get another population, destroy my mine, build another professional sports for some cheap 4 additional strength. And yeah, I still have some civil actions left. Thought about Churchill, but it doesn't make that much of a difference, and I don't want to destroy necessarily another thing to build another unit. And at the end I went for something where I'm not sure if it is the correct decision, but at least it will help me already this turn maximizing my amount of strength without requiring too much destruction, while also at least somewhat improving my economy. And that is at the end too, after I upgrade another warrior, which puts me at 27 strength. So sadly I still need more strength if I want to avoid losing either a blue tech or 6 science, allowing Lcfyx to go for the Air Force already at the next turn. And yeah, with that I take Marie Curie, electing her, increasing my science production, getting a bit of culture production, and then I can actually develop the scientific method. And one thing that I didn't have in mind that much, just because it's so rare upgrading from alchemy to scientific method, is that if you have the architecture, those upgrades are actually extremely cheap. I have only one resource left, but that's all it requires in order for me to go for that upgrade. So resource-wise, that's an extremely cheap upgrade, something that I didn't have in mind actually. And with that, out of the sudden, I'm even at 29 strength, losing only 4 science, having now some increased science production, thanks to Marie Curie, and going for the scientific method, which of course also cost 6 science. And then I can still take the reserves, and I at the end also decided to take the democracy here. I will now lose 4 science, but at least I minimize the amount that Lcfyx gets out of this war, and I'm myself now at 29 strength. Maybe at this point Lcfyx has forgotten that he basically knows that I have no H2 defense card in hand, and maybe somewhat respects this one card, and maybe rather tries an aggression against wolves, and at least I will also get one H3 draw, but I was still a bit afraid of potentially getting hit by another aggression. Also, I don't take the military theory, but Lcfyx has already the strategy wolves to warfare, so I was hoping that maybe I get another chance for military theory. I could have done something with Churchill, but Marie was available for cheaper and was able to provide me some strength without me requiring to sacrifice another thing of my economy. But yeah, the situation isn't ideal. Sadly, there's now also mechanized agriculture available for Lcfyx. Maybe I could have just not gone for Marie Curie, maybe even waited for Gandhi, even though Lcfyx has already 6 military actions, so that also only gives me some limited safety. And so at the end I decided to go for this turn, but I wasn't really certain and felt like I'm in a dangerous spot, but my economy is still somewhat intact. I still get more population with the ocean liner service. If I get rockets soon, maybe I can stabilize and maybe I'm not out of the game yet. Lcfyx steals now 4 science, and sadly, as you can see, goes for another aggression. The blunder sadly chooses me instead of wolves, but also rightly so, with the knowledge that he has, and I am now very low in resources. And the additional resources actually allow Lcfyx now to go for 2 upgrades to mechanized agriculture, allowing him at the next turn to already increase his population 2 times. He then takes Churchill in hand. It's interesting that he only takes him in hand because he at the moment doesn't need a happy face from Shakespeare, so he could have already elected him for 3 additional culture. Maybe Lcfyx wanted to keep his options open, of maybe still going for something like journalism and opera, or maybe needing the happy face of Shakespeare the next turn, but still an interesting choice here to not elect Churchill. Now it's Wolf's turn. He also kind of needs to increase his strength by a bit. Does that with going for the team sports, playing the military build up for 10 resources, using all of those resources with upgrading and building Rifleman, is now at 30 strength, so sadly I'm now the weakest again. He then takes the efficient upgrade, the reserves, and also a copy of tanks. And he doesn't take the rockets, which I was happy to see. Maybe thinks that I'm already in a dangerous spot, and of course it would also be somewhat a hate draft, so there's a second copy, so I do think it just makes sense for him, but I was still very happy to see that I now have access to rockets. Can't build one next turn because of having lost science and resources to Lcfyx, but maybe in 2 turns there's the chance that I can maybe somewhat stabilize. Now it's my turn. I don't really want to push the impact of agriculture now that Lcfyx went for those mechanized agricultures. Especially because he was still the player where I thought I might have some chances, just because he's not that far away in culture, and maybe he doesn't find a nice way to build up a culture engine potentially. I start my turn by using the ocean liner service, and this turn I just mostly spent my turn by taking a bunch of cards, and at least there are some interesting cards available for me. I take the rockets, a card that I definitely need the patriotism, the reserves, the endowment, the engineering genius, because I might just need to hope that I will somehow survive and maybe can still finish a wonder at the end. And then with the last civil action, I play the one copy of reserves that I had in hand already for resources to be civil actions efficient. And the next turn I will be able to build 2 rockets, and thanks to the patriotism also copy to the defensive army tactic, so I'm somewhat safe. But in order to be safe from an aggression, and Lcfyx could very well try another aggression, I kinda also need to build another swordsman, going up to 8 swordsmen, at least, meaning that if I just build 4 rockets, I can get 4 defensive army tactics going, which gives me actually a respectable amount of strength. I draw 2 cards, the impact of Harmony with the Ocean Liner service, maybe my ability of, at the last turn for example, just disbanding some units and building up for that Harmony. That's an impact that has at least some potential. Lcfyx Seeds, the developed territory is revealed. I didn't bid that much for it, I didn't want to be in danger of an aggression, and also I knew that there's still the autonomous territory coming, which might be the even more important one. Wolves is able to win the colony though, at least has to spend a lot of those colonization cards. Lcfyx will this turn go for Churchill. With that, he probably should have elected him already at the turn before. He has now missed out on 3 culture, but maybe it was worthwhile to keep some options open, but I'm not sure. He then takes the reserves, just maximizing the amount of resource that he can get, and at the next turn, he could declare war, develop the air forces thanks to Churchill, and build 2 of them thanks to Churchill, so Churchill helping a lot here in order to make him quite threatening. Now it's Wolf's turn, he starts going for cannons, copies to the defensive army tactic, sadly he gets the second copy of air forces, but it was just more likely that he will get it than I do after I let Lcfyx have the first copy. He will upgrade his last lab, takes the revolutionary idea. Now it is my turn, I increase my population, and this turn it's time to go for rockets. So I will build 1 rocket. I don't necessarily need to copy the defensive army tactic already this turn, because I can still, thanks to the patriotism, build 2 rockets at the next turn and copy the defensive army tactic, so I decided to rather get some earlier draws in. Especially because if the game remains somewhat peaceful, which is maybe not that likely with Lcfyx having this Churchill setup, and also Wolves having some potential, then maybe I can also get the military theory when I then copy the tactic. And yeah, so this turn the main decision was how greedy should I play it. The good news is that I'm actually safe from a war from Lcfyx. So of course he can declare war and go for 2 air forces, but that is not enough for him, and the amount that I can threaten is actually higher. I will take the military theory, and here the decision was, with the remaining civil actions, do I want to take that revolutionary idea, making sure that I can already develop the military theory at the next turn, and generally making it that I have just more science available, or do I take the space flight, which is for all players the best wonder available, if I remember it correctly, and if I should survive all of this and maybe can just finish that, it could definitely mean that I can at least still finish second. I didn't really have hopes for first place here, but the second place could be possible. And in order to be safe from a war from Lcfyx, if I remember my calculations correctly, I don't need the 5 strength of the military theory next turn. The bigger problem is actually Wolves, who has the Great Wall and could potentially build a cannon and 2 air forces. And with the strength that he can achieve, he is quite a bit more threatening. And if I don't take the revolutionary idea, he could win a war against me. The thing is, he has only enough food to increase his population once normally, and he needs to play the reserves for resources if he wants to go for that big war with building a cannon and 2 air forces. And he generally is in a nice spot, and the war would not be too big at least, even if I don't have enough science to go for military theory at the next turn. And there's the freedom of movement that I have knowledge about that could potentially help myself in case there's a war. And because of the existence of such an event, wolves also might decide against going for war, because he is, I think, in a good position. He maybe doesn't necessarily need to go for a play against me that requires some risks. And with that, I decided to go for the greedy line here. In 2 turns, I will have enough science to go for military theory anyway, but I was also hoping that with taking the space flight and actually also the oil, just as a potential technology to develop for the space flight, and who knows, maybe I can go for an upgrade from coal to oil with Marie Curie that increases my culture and science production by a bit. So I just thought it's more likely that I can do something with the oil than with the multimedia. I was doubtful that I can finish the Wonder and build a multimedia. But I was hoping that with me taking the space flight and those 2 cards now, there are only 10 cards left on Lcfyx turn. He can't really go for a war against me. I was hoping that wolves will decide against going for a war against me, and at my next turn with the I was hoping that I then can just end the age and then hopefully finish the space flight at my last turn. I have the endowment still, and I was hoping that maybe I could actually still finish at the 2nd place here. And yeah, so that I had actually some hopes at this point. I also can't get hit by an aggression any longer because I'm actually the strongest now. I draw a war in the Impact of Culture. Impact of Culture may be interesting if I go for the democracy. Lcfyx offers a military alliance to wolves. And when I saw his turn, I was a bit worried, because he increases his population, uses Churchill, goes for the cavalryman, builds 2 of them, and after taking the multimedia, he reveals the modern army tactic, plays the reserves, and then just floats his last 2 civil actions. He goes up to 56 strength. Thanks to Churchill, he has enough science to go for Air Force at the next turn. Luckily, he's missing 1 resource to go for 2 Air Force at the next turn. And first I thought his plan is to hit me with a war at the next turn. And I mean, that's might also something that he at least wants to threaten, but the thing is, and probably he also calculated that, is that I can defend against such a war from him. So even if the age doesn't end, he can't really go for a war against me. But what now could potentially happen is that Lcfyx is giving the tactic to wolves, and wolves could maybe also go for a threatening amount of strength just by building another cannon in air forces, but he could now potentially build up some units and maybe also not touch the row, and then he might even be the player who is quite threatening, even though declaring a war and copying the tactic could be quite a bit expensive. So it's not clear whether wolves would do something like this, but he also might just have a tactic for himself, and Lcfyx at least forces me to react, makes it less likely that the age will end, and makes it possible for wolves to make sure that the age doesn't end in case he wants to set up for a bigger war, and potentially could maybe even play it somehow that he can go for the war with copying the tactic in 2 turns. So I was a bit worried, and I was hoping that wolves would not go for some war preparations now. Wolf Seeds, autonomous territory is revealed. Could potentially be relevant, because with me having an additional civil action, it gets maybe a bit easier for me to potentially end the age. So I was actually willing to bid a lot here, 4 swordsmen, but it's not enough. Lcfyx is able to win it for 1 rifleman and a lot of cards, takes the culture, and still is threatening some strength, because he can now, while he didn't have enough resource to build 2 air forces, he has enough to build an air force and a rifleman. And I stay at my 7 civil actions, and now I was very interested to see what wolves will be doing. He goes for the tanks, builds a tank. He has actually his own modern army tactic, and now I was thinking, oh, things could be getting dangerous. He plays the revolutionary idea, the patriotism, plays the reserves for food, increases his population, develops the air force already, builds an air force, is at 67 strength, draws 3 cards, and at the next turn he could declare a war, build a tank and a rocket, and then go up towards an amount of strength that I sadly won't be able to match. And with both Lcfyx and wolves not touching any card from the row, sadly I also don't have the ability to end the age here. So I felt like, ooh, That is not looking good for me now, but of course I still have to try something, and at least if the freedom of movement timing is right, maybe there's still some hope left. And I kinda also thought I need to start pushing impacts here. I could keep maybe impacts in hand. Ideally, the freedom of movement is revealed just at my next politics phase, because if it is revealed now, wolvs, if he goes for war, could even put something in air forces, and then his war gets even bigger. Nonetheless, I kind of thought I needed to take some risks here. I still thought that if maybe I finish at the second place, then probably before Lcfyx, who can't go for a war against me, despite his ability of going for a rifleman and an air force. And he has only 2 organized religions, so I thought that my Impact of Harmony could maybe be good against him, and decided to blade it into the deck, hoping that freedom of movement is maybe not yet revealed. It also is indeed not yet revealed. Instead, the civil unrest, which makes it that we all do not lose any culture. Then I will use the ocean liner service to increase my population. And now the question is, what can I do here? And it's a bit tricky. At the end I decided, and first of all, I need to make space in mind anyway. I decided to play the patriotism here. I build a rocket. I actually still don't copy the tactic, which maybe is a mistake, but I also kind of thought I need to get some more draws, and at the next turn I can go for the military theory, so I have enough military actions then anyway. There's however one option that I potentially destroy myself here, but also only if the freedom of movement is not revealed. And if there's a war that is not revealed, things are maybe looking bad for me anyway, but at this point I could have calculated a lot of things, and I also did calculate some things, but after doing those calculations, still didn't really feel like I understand the situation enough. And with my knowledge that I have from the next turn, there is some danger towards not copying the tactic, but only if the freedom of movement is not revealed, and for that maybe I have to hope anyways in case of a war. So I build a rocket, I don't copy the tactic. I take 1 copy of Revolutionary Idea, play the Endowment to make Spaceman, take a copy of Urban Growth, could take another Revolutionary Idea. Sadly I don't have enough hand space and civil actions to take both copies of Revolutionary Idea and the Fundamentalism, which could allow me to go for both military and fundamentalism, military theory and fundamentalism at the next turn. So that's not an option. And with that I rather took this copy of Urban Growth, because I still have this Impact of Culture, and maybe if I just build a couple of religions at my last turn, that could still be possible to make it work, especially if I maybe go for the democracy. And if I develop military theory at the next turn, I still have 5 + 7, 12 science left, which means that I still can go for the democracy, but only if I don't destroy lab, which might potentially be the most interesting thing to destroy. So that's the Revolutionary Idea could also have been maybe a good choice and given me some more options, but then I might miss some resources to build this religion. Then I still have 2 civil actions left, and I again decided to just make space in my hand, took the mechanized agriculture. I sadly will have famine this turn, but I can't really do anything about it. I need all of my resources in order to be able to threaten 2 rockets at the next turn. There's of course the freedom of movement coming, and I thought a lot about, can I do some stuff already in just counting on the freedom of movement? It will help me, but for now I just wanted to have those 14 resources available. And then I can either use the freedom of movement to maximize my strength, maybe in addition to those 2 rockets, either get another rocket with using putting a coal into rocket, or maybe putting a coal into professional sports, just getting more strength. Or what might potentially be more interesting, I could use the freedom of movement to make it more cheap to get into the 2 rockets, not increase my strength even further, but making it that I maybe can finish the space flight at the last turn. And of course, I still had some small hope left here that maybe there won't be any war happening, because wolvs draw 3 cards. Maybe his play could also make sense in a scenario where he just thinks that play is also good if he doesn't draw a war, but if he draws a war, it's just very good. Lcfyx can't go for a war, so maybe there also won't be any war happening. Also, I was hoping that maybe I could get another strong impact with the 3 draws that I'm letting myself have here. I do think it is the correct decision to not copy and hope for those draws, as I need some luck probably anyway. Draw another war, colonization card, sadly no impact. Lcfyx will actually increase his strength during his turn, but he is not able to go for enough strength in order to declare war against me. Can build an air force, destroys actually a farm in order to build a rifleman. Maybe that could make my Impact of Agriculture playable potentially, but for now it's still quite a bit better for Lcfyx. Also he takes the satellites away, which is a way for both wolves and me, even though I have of course the navigation, so for me it's not that relevant, but for wolves it could be a way to go for more strength. And let's see what will happen during Wolf's politics phase. First of all, H4 starts. Lcfyx discards the journalism and the opera. His whole Shakespeare thingy with the printing presses and dramas and journalisms and operas didn't really it didn't really go that way in this game for him. Instead, he rather used Shakespeare as a military leader using his happy face. And Wolves loses Darwin, and sadly, as I expected it, Wolves has this war here, and now it's not looking that great, but if I reveal freedom of movement during my turn, maybe there could still be some hope left. Wolves goes for Steve Jobs, helps him with the happy faces, increases his population, builds a tank, destroys a mine, builds a cannon, is now at 89 strength, and then takes the engineering, which could be helpful for a bunch of impacts. It gives him another technology to develop with Steve Jobs. This turn again was quite complicated because, I mean, I kinda have to play around freedom of movement, but I had to think which impact do I want to push. Potentially both of them could be quite bad. I kinda need to think about finishing spaceflight. If I want to finish spaceflight, I'm not allowed to put a coal into rockets, so I kinda need to take the lab away. If I take the lab away, I don't have enough science to get into democracy if I get into military theory this turn. If I don't get into democracy, the impact of culture is bad. Impact of agriculture is also bad if I plan on finishing the spaceflight. And so but I kinda have to push in order to get the freedom of movement. At the end, there is actually a nice solution. I have to admit that I actually didn't see it when I pushed the impact of culture. Just at the end made more sense to try something with the impact of culture than with the impact of agriculture. And so I pushed it, and the freedom of movement allows me something here. And the freedom of movement is revealed, so I was happy to see that. I use it to put a lab into rockets, meaning if I go for the military theory this turn, I can't go for the democracy, but thanks to getting that rocket without having to spend a military action, there is actually the possibility now for me to, after using the ocean liner and build another rocket, already copy the tactic without requiring the military actions from the military theory. I'm already at 72 strength, and of course the military theory would generally still be nice to develop, but it's actually not that much worse to go for the democracy here. Even with going for the military theory, I'm not safe from the aggression. Of course, it maybe makes it less likely that Wolves tries one. But I was again, at this point, I didn't have a lot of hope left, but I was not completely hopeless. If maybe the impacts that Wolves have seeded are nice for me against Lcfyx, then maybe I could still have a shot, because I will now be able to finish the spaceflight at the next turn. And so I was mainly considering my points against Lcfyx, and against Lcfyx it's only 2 culture less to develop the democracy this turn instead of getting the 5 additional strength from the military theory. So it's only 2 culture less, but it makes it that I have 5 culture already this turn, and I will take this order urban growth this turn, which I then can use to build up some more culture production to hopefully be able to win the impact of culture that I have just seeded. And I can do this while also being able to finish the space flight, so I felt like that might be the best solution, but it was a bit of a puzzle this turn, also the turn before already. I take this urban growth, I take just some cards, and then I can't really do anything else. Sadly, I have famine again, and I also will have famine again at the next turn because I don't have the resources to avoid it. So I also had to consider some other lines where I fix my famine, don't finish the space flight, Just go for more strength and then at the next turn fix the famine, maybe even trying something with impact of agriculture. It was actually quite difficult, but I think trying something with the impact of culture, which hopefully now will be actually a good impact, while also being able to finish the space flight, sadly at the cost of having a famine, felt like the best option for me. Lcfyx seeds, the migration is revealed, so at least nothing bad for me. Lcfyx will go for the satellites, and he is actually willing to use Churchill here to build another air force, which sadly makes it really look like there's impact of strength in the deck, which makes it even harder to believe being able to not finish last here. I can maybe just hope that Lcfyx does this, hoping that maybe wolvs has seeded the impact, but he could have just taken the culture from Churchill. Maybe he wouldn't have been able to defend against an aggression. That of course could be another reason. But it kind of looks like impact of strength might be in there. I also was hoping that wolvs doesn't go for an aggression against me. I couldn't make myself safe anyway, and I kind of have to hope for good outcomes for me anyway, hoping that maybe wolves seeds an impact that is good for me against Lcfyx, and sadly there's an armed intervention, so with that aggression, I think my last bits of hope went away. Before that aggression, I thought maybe there's a scenario that I can construct where I finished second. Now, I mean, when we take a look at my turn, it's still not impossible to overtake Lcfyx, which is actually remarkable after how the game went so far, but it would require some that Lcfyx, who has seeded a majority of impacts, has seeded some that are actually good for me. This turn I will develop a technology, finish the space flight for 25 points, so a solid space flight. I can then disband a swordsman, build a religion. I could disband another swordsman, build another religion, but I think it's better here to upgrade this lab, which increases my culture reduction with Marie Curie, also improves my impact of architecture, and it means that I overtake wolves in science production. Him destroying, or not destroying, but using the freedom of movement to put a scientific method into religion makes it very much look like he didn't has impact of science in there, but I felt like impact of science might be the one impact that maybe could mean that a miracle could still be possible, so I kind of needed to play towards that. Maybe wolves overlooked that I can upgrade to computers or something, so I need to hope for something here. And with the impact of, if I assume that the impact of science was seeded by wolves, I mean, I'm 23 culture behind Lcfyx, which is actually still not that much. And then with my impact of culture and harmony is equal for us. Culture gives me +7 against Lcfyx. I am only 16 points behind Lcfyx, and then with an impact of science, I'm only 2 points behind Lcfyx. And if then of all of the impacts that Lcfyx has seeded, if those are actually better for me than for him, then I could actually still finish second. But at this point, that was a bit of a stretch to still have hope for that. Before the aggression, I would have been, if there's an impact of science in there, and if wolves maybe would have pushed, I guess wolves then would have made sure to keep more science, but yeah, maybe then I could have had some hopes with 2 impacts seeded by wolves, but with the aggression and losing 7 more culture, I didn't have that much hope left. And of course, the play from Lcfyx, as I said, kinda made it obvious that impact of strength is likely in there, and with that impact of strength, I of course can't overcome the difference, even if there should now be the impact of science coming. There's the impact of culture that I've seeded, it's actually fine for me. There's the impact of harmony that is best for wolves, and the same for me as for Lcfyx. And then there's also the impact of colonies, which is the same for all. And the last impact is the impact of happiness, which is actually also the same for all, meaning that the differences between all of the players are relatively equal. I'm 30 points behind Lcfyx, and Lcfyx is 28 points behind wolves. Wolves being able to win the first game of the new season, at least the first game where I was involved. And I sadly start with a loss. This game I got quite heavily punished for my decision of not taking cannons, which sadly also was influenced by the call to arms, but I still could have taken the cannons. I'm not sure if I go for the same situation again. Maybe I now take the cannons, but I do think all of the things that I did instead had quite some value for me. And with it being the first copy, I decided to take the risk if there would have been no call to arms revealed, and maybe if the call to arms is that impactful here, I should have not pushed the historic territory, and then I could have taken the cannons, maybe the game would have gone differently, but I decided to take that risk, and then sadly with the defensive army being revealed, I got punished quite heavily, got hit by aggressions and wars. I still had some hopes until the end of Age 3, but sadly, then Lcfyx and wolvs didn't take any cards from the row, making it that wolvs can go for a war against me, which was sadly in both of their interests, as we saw, and then it was just too much. I mean, even then there were some scenarios that after the war I could still maybe finish before Lcfyx, but when I saw the turn with both of them not taking any cards, I thought that might now be over, very likely. Alright, but an interesting game nonetheless. Lcfyx going for some interesting moves. I'm not sure if we can say that they paid off with him discarding printing press drama, journalism and opera to the end of the age, but he still finished second at the end, so maybe reacted in the right manner and not stick to his plan of going for some Shakespeare buildings. And his decision to put pressure on me certainly did have quite an effect here. Alright, there's also one other game finished, so we can take a quick look at the standings. And there's already one other game finished, where Marta Pecheur and Fanta Black actually tied for the first place. You can see it, both of them have 3.5 points now in the standings, while Lcfyx lost that game. Yeah, so not a lot to see. Lcfyx, not the ideal start, but at least now 2 points against me, while wolvs, Fanta Black and Marta Pecheur all have a good start. I don't have a good start, but a lot of games still to come, so everything is still possible. And with that, I hope that it was an interesting game for you to watch. I hope you are excited to see this season with quite some strong players being in my Master Division. It feels more like a Grandmaster Division, to be honest. And so I hope you're looking forward to the upcoming games. And then I say thanks for watching, have a nice time, and see you in the next video.